Hello, Glenn here. Ooh, that was very Nazi-ish. I won't do that again. Hi, Glenn here, Monster Guitars. I'm just about to start spraying clear coats onto my nice red guitar, Type O, because of blood. But I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm going to spray it with and why I'm going to choose that. So come closer and see what I've got here. So here's a piece of wood. It's not the same wood as is on the guitar, but that's not essential for what I'm going to show you. And it has on it the same die that is on the guitar top. I'll show you the brand. No one pays me to display their brands, but it is quite a nice one. The brand name is Briwax, and they do a number of wood finishing products, including spirit-based dyes such as this one, and also a sanding sealer that you'll see shortly. Okay, so I'm going to be spraying over this. Actually, not just over this. There is one very thin and now scuffed coat of sanding sealer, but I think it's safe to say that whatever I spray will come into contact with some of this dye. Now, there are some things, I mean, I could spray anything on there and it would possibly work, but I want to avoid disasters and things that I would have to tidy up afterwards, because I noticed something. So here's the sanding sealer that I rubbed on. It's made by the same company. Now, sanding sealer, or this type of sanding sealer, is shellac based, and all it is de-waxed shellac. Now, shellac, as you may know, is, well, there are these secretions from, I think it's called the lac beetle. I think that's its name. And you can buy them as flakes, or you can buy it pre-mixed like this. And the way you make up shellac is that you take those flakes and you mix them up with some alcohol. It will be denatured alcohol, which dissolves the flakes into this sort of sticky liquid. But what that means is that it's obviously not water-based, it's alcohol-based or spirit-based. And this is a spirit-based dye. And so what I started to find, which is why I only put one coat on, but what I started to find when I began applying this sanding sealer is that as soon as I started rubbing it on to the dye started coming off. It started lifting. Now that's not good. So I just did the one coat and then scuffed it with steel wool, and I had to do a little bit more scraping on the binding because some of that dye rubbed onto the binding. Now, just by itself, you might think, well, that would come off no matter what you rubbed it with. Not true. If you just rub the dye, it doesn't come off, and you would hope not, because it's a pretty rubbish product if it just comes off when you touch it. So, what that tells me is that if I tried to put on a spirit or anything similar based product as a clear coat, I would run the risk of it running, that is, of the dye running when I sprayed it on, and potentially moving on to the binding and causing all sorts of problems, and I don't want that, because who wants problems? This is a product I was considering using because I've used it before. In fact, I used it over this dye before, and there was a small amount of movement, but I didn't have binding, so it didn't specifically create that problem. But it's called a lacquer paint. Lacquer is ambiguous. It can mean lots of things. I think it's basically an enamel, and one of the ingredients is acetone, along with other things like methyl ethyl ketone, isobutyl acetate, and so on. It's very spirit-based. It's very alcohol-based. It would lift this just as the shellac lifted this from the wood, and I don't want that to happen because that's dumb. So what I'm going to do now is just put a little bit of water onto this cloth. And there's a little bit coming off, but very little. Like it's barely, and it's only because I'm rubbing fairly hard. Okay, so water doesn't do what the alcohol was doing, and that's good. That tells me that it would be a much better idea to use a water-based product on this, so I will. The brand is White Knight. I haven't used it before, but it's a crystal clear acrylic rather than an enamel. So it's an acrylic clear coat. That is what I will apply on this guitar, because acrylic, of course, is water-based. Did I say that already? Well, you probably know. Acrylic is water-based and not spirit-based or alcohol-based or anything like that, oil-based. So with that said, oh, this, by the way, is my beer. I won't be applying that because that would be a waste. To the spray booth. Make sure that you wear a proper ventilator. A dust mask will not offer enough protection against paint fumes. Be safe. Ooh, that's strong. So I'm just going to leave that now. Leave the workshop for the evening. And I'll do another couple of those tomorrow. I'll catch it early in the evening. Maybe only one more tomorrow. And then one the following night, and so on and so forth. I'm not sure how many coats to put on. I will do some internet research to see what's best with this type of finish.